legislative branch. The head of the executive branch is the president that is headed by the state.
There are 6 main things that the executive branch is in charge of. Number 1, they can grant reprieves and pardons except for impeachment cases.
Number 2 is that they appoint ambassadors with, of course, the consult of the Senate.
Number 3 is that they appoint public ministers and consuls with the consult of the Senate.
Number 4, they are allowed to reject or accept the judges of the Supreme Court.
Number 5, they can appoint basically any officer ranked below the Supreme Court judges.
Finally, number 6, they can fill up the vacancy during the recess of the Senate.
You might be wondering who makes up the executive branch. Well, this branch is made up of the president, the vice president, and of course, his cabinet officials. Now, before we move on, the president has a set list of 7 jobs that he is required to attend to.
Job number 1. He is the Chief of State. This role requires him to be an inspiring example for the American people.
Job number 2. He is the Chief Executive. The President is the boss of millions of government workers in the executive branch, and he also has to decide how laws will be enforced. Job number 3. He is the Chief Diplomat. He decides what American representatives and ambassadors will say to the foreign governments.
Job number 4. He is the Commander-in-Chief. The President is in charge of the U.S. Armed Forces and decides where they will be stationed, shipped, and how weapons will be used.
Job number 5. He is the Chief Legislator. Only Congress can make the laws, but the Constitution gives the President power to influence Congress.
Job number 6. He is the Chief of Party. In this role, the President helps members of his political party get elected or appointed to office. Finally, job number 7. He is the Chief Guardian of the economy. The President is expected to help the economy run smoothly by being concerned with unemployment, high prices, taxes, business profits, and the general prosperity of the country. What are the requirements to become president? Really, there isn't a lot you have to do to become president. Rule number 1, you must be a native-born U.S. citizen. Rule number 2, you must be at least 35 years of age to run for office. And finally, rule number 3, you must have lived in the United States for at least 14 years. These rules are the explicit criteria of the Constitution of the United States.
Now, what are the executive agencies and what do they do? Executive agencies are departments of the executive branch that are responsible for carrying out laws set by the government. Now, what is the President's Cabinet and what do they do? The President's Cabinet includes the Vice President and 15 others from executive departments. The Cabinet's role is to advise the President on any subject he may require relating to their duties. This concludes our executive branch segment of this tutorial. Stay tuned for information on the judicial branch.
Hi everybody, I'm going to explain the judicial branch. First, there are powers associated with each branch of government. The powers of the judicial branch are to decide upon actions that are unconstitutional and interpret treaties, but of course checking with the President and Congress first. And they also can decide upon laws that are unconstitutional. They can also declare a bill constitutional if Congress comes to them with a bill. They can decide punishments for the men or women that are brought to them because they cause numerous accounts of violence or frequently surpass federal law or committed murder. There are 3 courts in the judicial branch, each with their own purpose. The first court is the District Court. Second, the U.S. Court of Appeals. And the third, which is the highest ranked court, is the U.S. Supreme Court. District Court is the court that hears violations of federal laws, such as kidnapping, bank robbery, drug trafficking, etc. This court has the power to hear a case for the first time, and like all other courts, there's a judge. But a judge is a public official appointed to decide cases in a court of law. And this court also uses a jury, which are a body of people, typically 12 in number, which are sworn to give a verdict in a legal case on the basis of evidence submitted to them in the trial. Our next court is the U.S. Court of Appeals. This court hears cases of civil or criminal cases tried in the U.S. District Courts. They do not retry cases or make decisions about the defendant's guilt, but review the written records from the trial courts to determine if the question raised on appeal is valid, and if so, how the problem should be addressed. This court falls under appellate jurisdiction, which is the power of court to review decisions and change outcomes of decisions of lower courts. And the U.S. Court of Appeals jurisdiction also has the power to remand a case if felt necessary. Remand is to send back a case to a lower court from which it was appealed with instructions as to further proceedings should be held. And the last court is the U.S. Supreme Court. They hear all cases arising under the U.S. Constitution, cases of federal laws, treaties made by the United States, cases about ambassadors, public ministers, and basically any serious crime or repeat offender of a federal crime or a political crime. You would have to come to be tried in the U.S. Supreme Court. And Supreme Court also falls under original jurisdiction, which is the power to hear a case for the first time. Also falls under appellate jurisdiction, which is the power of a court to review decisions and change outcomes of decisions of a lower court. A justice in the Supreme Court does almost everything. The justice decides on what cases to hear and what cases not. And if it hears a case, then based upon the past testimony given in smaller courts and the new information presented in the case that they decide to hear, then they may give a verdict on their decision. And the way that you can become a Supreme Court justice is to be nominated by the President to be a candidate. And the Senate votes whether to conform or reject the nomination. If the candidate is confirmed, he or she is appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court. And last but not least, the Rule of Four. The Rule of Four is a custom of the United States Supreme Court. It dictates that if 4 justices decide on a case is worthy of being heard, the court will agree to hear it. This rule is designed to ensure that the court's majority cannot control which cases are heard, as without it, the minority justice might find themselves unable to try cases of interest.
And that concludes the judicial.
The branch of the federal and state government empowered to make the laws that are enforced by the executive branch and interpreted by the judicial branch. This consists of Congress and 50 state legislators. Structure. The legislative branch, otherwise known as Congress. Then you have Senate and the House of Representatives. Let's start with the Senate. There's 2 per state, each serve a 6-year term, must be 30, a U.S. citizen for 9 years, and a resident of the state they represent. In this, there's the President pro tempore, who is normally the highest-ranking Senate. Their job is to preside over the Senate whenever the Vice President is not there to do so. This makes them 3rd in line for presidency. Now for the breakdown of the House of Representatives. The representatives are based on the population, and they each have a 2-year term. They must at least be 25, a U.S. citizen for at least 7 years, and a resident of the state they represent. Then there's the Speaker of the House, who's normally the leader of the House of Representatives. Their job is to keep the House in order and assign committee membership and chairmanship. How a bill becomes a law.
Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman, and he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." Then he sat down and wrote me out and introduced me to Congress, and I became a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. Now I'm stuck in committee, and I'll sit here and wait while a few key congressmen discuss and debate whether they should let me be a law. I hope and pray that they will, but today I am still just a bill. I hope they decide to report on me favorably, otherwise I may die.
Die?
Yeah, die in committee. Oh, but it looks like I'm gonna live. Now I go to the House of Representatives and they vote on me.
If they vote yes, what happens?
Then I go to the Senate and the whole thing starts all over again.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And if they vote for me on Capitol Hill, well, then I'm off to the White House where I'll wait in a line with a lot of other bills for the president to sign. And if he signs me, then I'll be a law. How I hope and pray that he will. But today I am still just a bill.
It's not easy to become a law, is it?
No, but how I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
He signed your bill. Now you're a law.
Oh, yes.